Hello, hello. Just as a small follow-up to my TrimSheet tutorial, I just want to showcase how you can actually start manipulating the normal maps themselves within Blender to maybe have a more stylized look. So what I mean by that is like having more of that faceted or like cell-like look. Because right now we have very smooth edges here, but we can easily manipulate this to get more of that cartoon look, which might be more desirable if your art is stylized and perhaps you don't use a lot of soft brushes. Personally, that's the way I do it. I like using the lasso tool and filling in really flat edges. I just really like things to be like sharp around the edges there. So to do that, we need to understand the concept of what a normal map is. And I'm just going to quickly demonstrate it using our example here. So if I just, let's just look at our wall here from the previous tutorial. So if I just use this normal map and we have it plugged in, you can see there's like a multiple of colors. And I'm going to really simplify this. Basically, it dictates each direction in the X, Y, and Z coordinate. And we can view that actually if we split this into the separate RGB. We can see what directions they are. So we're just going to add in a separate RGB. If we plug this in here and we click on this, we can see it's facing in one direction. If we shift down, you can see it's pointing from the right. No, from the left side, but lighting the right side here. And then this is on top, and it looks like red is in front. Now, I'm just going to try it with XYZ to see if it does similar things. So this dictates the directions too. So front, side, and top. Now, we have actually 6 directions here. While it may seem like 3, if we invert these, we'll get the opposite side. So I'm just going to use RGB here. So let's say if we want to go to this other side, if we invert it, let's do this. See, we kind of get the reverse of this. Similarly, if we do it this way, we get like the back of it and then the bottom of it being lit. So 6 for 3, 2 for 1. All right. So that being said, how do we go in and start manipulating this stuff? Well, there's 2 ways. We can, it's like some fancy term like quantize it, but basically what that means is if you're been around for a while, let's say like 90s, you remember like computers used to have like 256 colors, it was like interlacing, so it creates a ramp. We can do that within Blender by manipulating these channels. So we're going to like compress the values so that we don't have these nice gradations. We're going to limit how it looks. Or I think we'll like posterize it. So we'll go in here and let's just set this up here. So I'm just gonna do that. So we just see that here, and let's just drag this out, so we can really see what's going on here. Alright, so we're gonna have separate RGB. Then we're gonna also include a combined RGB. So basically, we're just gonna configure each of these and then put them back together, and then use this final output. We're just manipulating the black and white values. There are 2 ways to go about this. One is the color ramp, and the other one is the map range. Both have the pros and cons. I'll showcase both, and then you can decide which one you understand more. Some people like it more visual. Some people like using numbers. So we'll just use both. So color ramp, we'll have it here, and map range, we'll have it here. So let's just use the color ramp first. We'll plug in the R into the factor, color here, and let's just look what's happening here. I will just put in these 2 values here so we can see what's happening. And when we start manipulating, you can see things are starting to change slightly. Very interesting. I might put a grayscale here, so let me do this so we can see black and white, so it's easier to see what's happening here. So we're manipulating the front facing light. So you can see here as we do that, we're kind of like changing overall what the lighting situation's like. So to get that faceted edge, we can either really clamp these up, or we can use something called a constant, which kind of like already you can see what's happening is we're having two values, and we can add in a third value, and let's maybe put this 0.5 and try and like manipulate it this way. So when we have this is complete, we can like copy and paste these to the other channels. So we'll do that with each one so you can see what's happening. Bring this down, and now, lo and behold, we have a more like a cartoon-like look to it. So if I just delete this and let me put the color in here and bring this into the color here and view this, you can see it's acting more faceted, like the edges are very faceted looking. Now we have a lot of like odd areas here, and that's because we'll have to fine-tune each channel, and we can end up just eyeballing it. The way these things are split is up to the discretion of the artist and the kind of looks they're going for. So we can play around with this to try and get something interesting here. So we can do this. You can see here, like this value was too much for this one. Let's drag this down, try to like look at how the shading look like. So if we want more light to come in, we'll maybe drag this down. That looks kind of more desirable. And so you see here, let's bring this down like this. And now we have something that has 3 tones and more stylized. So the differences of the normal map, if we take a look here, let me just delete this. Yes. So this is our normal map that we loaded in, and if we do this, this is what our normal map looks like. And it looks like a complete mess, but again, this is something we'll be using just as a reference. It looks really odd right now, not used to stuff that we're not really used to seeing in games or anywhere actually, but it adds the effect that we're looking for, and that's what matters the most in the end, because we're just going to take a reference photo to it. I haven't actually imported these kind of faceted mesh normal maps into a video game engine to see how it would react. Could be kind of cool, could be very artistic. I'd recommend you try it out and see what happens. But as a means to get that kind of faceted look for references, I think it does the job quite well. So we have this, and we have all our materials here. So this is one way of doing it, and we can play around with this, and you can like, you know, go in and change these to linear so that they have more of a bit of a smooth edge here. But if you kind of really go in and start like clamping these values, we can have a nice gradation like this. So let's try and do that way. So it won't be as rough between the transitions. So you can see here, it's starting to have a little bit more what do you call it, like smoothness to it. And so these are just like several techniques you can try out. So let's do that. Let's bring this up here and make this pure white. And so we still have that faceted edge, but you can see like it's smoothing out this way. Alright, so this is using the color ramps. So we can just delete this, and we can now try out map range. Map range is kind of similar. We're just dictating how dark the darks are and how light the lights are, and we can switch to something called stepped linear, which then kind of like how we're doing on the color ramps, clamping it by adding new color values. So if we just try this out, put this here, put the result here, we can see the red. And you can see it's kind of smooth, regular, nothing's changing. But if we go into the step linear, we have 4 steps, 2 steps, 3 steps. This is how we can start dictating how many steps we need. Now we just got to manipulate this, or copy and paste this into each channel. And once we put this all together, we'll have that kind of like step look. Now we can take a look at what the normal map looks like, very similar to what we have in the other one, but this one kind of like keeps it a little bit more consistent in terms of the color ramp. The color ramp run, again, was more visual, where you can kind of like mix and match stuff together. And you can actually mix and match stuff too. So let's say if you just want like the directional light of it going down to be rough, but then everywhere else to be smooth, you can just keep these things linear. I think, if I remember correctly, was it the green? This one here was top down, So we can use this, and you can see we can manipulate this like that. And if we combine everything together, you can kind of see that now we have the normals being manipulated from the top view. And you can see more facets what that would look like. There's some really interesting things happening here. Some cool looks. Anyway, yeah, I just wanted to showcase that there is a lot of flexibility in terms of manipulating these normal maps within Blender to have fun with this. Here, so let's just go back to stepped linear 4 stepped linear 4. So we have this really cool look. What else can we do with this? Well, since these are black and white, as we can see here, we can actually go in and add, let's say, patterning, or what I mean, like noise edges to fray it out, or have something more stylistic that'll be baked into the normal map. And we can do that by adding a mix RGB, and we can add in a pattern. So I'm just going to play with a few, but you can use any image you want. So for now, I'm just going to choose maybe a standard noise texture here, and let's plug in. I just got to think how this worked again. It's been a while. We will need to add, I think, this as a mask here. Let me just quickly work through this, and let's add this, and we can see what's happening here. I think we might need to do this instead, and then have this, and this, and then have this as a max or min. Where are you? Darken? Nope, that's not it. I think it is lighten. And we kind of need this to be UV mapped too, so we'll just quickly do this. And interesting. And then we need to do the same thing we did with the color ramp, just to try and get these edges to cooperate the way we want them to. And let's, I think we need to do it this way. Yes. Try and get those edges to appear more. Basically what I'm trying to do is trying to mask it so that only the edges are showing through. There's a number of ways to do this, but I'm just trying to remember the way I did it way back. And it can be a little tricky, because sometimes you might need to plug it in the back here, which I think we need to do for this one. So what we're going to do is use a mix in the back. It's always like the order of operations. It's always a tricky one. Okay, that looks like we're going to get somewhere here. Let's mix this in. Oh, there we go. See? So now we have it a little bit more edged out like this. We can like clamp it up and move it down. But you can see here, now we're getting more of this kind of cool, like dittered edge. So I'm just going to move this back here. I'm going to keep this me troubleshooting in, just because I want to show that it takes a lot of experimentation and trial and error to try and figure out the order of operations. And I've done this in the past previously, but you know, it's kind of hard to remember at times. I can't remember all the things I do. So let's just move this back like this, and let's move this like this. So, alright. So we can also take a look at our mask to see what's happening. Currently it's following our UVs, and the one thing that's problematic with that is you can see I don't really have proper UVs here. There's a way to remedy this, and the way to fix that is just using the object itself, so the scale will be consistent throughout, meaning that we can try and fix it this way. I think we can also use generated, which looks okay. So the reason why this isn't properly is I think the scale is not correct. Boarding multi-user, that could be it, because it's stretched out, so the scale of this isn't correct. Actually we can force it by using a null, and if I use the null here, everything's going to be consistent now, and we can scale this up and down using the null. So that's one way to get about it if you're using instances like I do. I tend to favor using instances, so I get errors like that. But to fix that, we just tie everything to an object, and we can scale this and rotate this, and everything in the scene will be consistent. Because that's the one thing I notice a lot with when people try to do like NPR stuff, is they'll have these nice noise textures, but it gets kind of odd when you have like low frequency detail, high frequency detail right next to each other, and it's just because they're using UV map methods. So if you tie everything together in a null, everything will look consistent and uniform, if that's the style you're going for. Alright, so we can play around with this, we can play around with that, we can take a look at the results again, and now we can see that it's looking all cool. That's what we want. And we can play around with this, bring this up. Okay, so let's just say we like what we have here. Maybe I might scale this up a bit more so we can really see it like that. And I will just bring this over here. I'll have to create new mix nodes and copy and paste them throughout here. So let's do this, delete this, and let's just go like this. 3. And we can copy this here. And remember, we have this on the top, and then we have our map ranges. So copy this, whoop, copy this, plug this into the top, plug this into the top, bring this here, boom, boom, boom. And now, if we take a look at this, you'll see we have this really nice mottled look to it. And that's pretty sweet, I think, because it's starting to look more like a brush stroke, right? Super neat. Like even here, this looks really beautiful. Now the effect changes depending on what kind of texture we use. Just again, as an example, I will grab this noise texture and let's try lines instead, so we can achieve that using the wave texture, which looks like this. Let me plug this in here. Ooh, that's kind of wild. OX diagonal. There we go. Diagonal. We can change the scale of this. Change this to band to ring, so it looks kind of like that, which kind of looks cool. Let's see what that looks like. So we'll just plug this in here and see what that will end up looking like. Now that's kind of neat. The reason why it's black is because it's the lines here are so drastic. We need to probably change this to something a bit lighter, but maybe if we do bands instead, might have the same effect here. Maybe this might not work as well as I thought it would. I think there's another one that we can use. Oh yeah, like that. Might definitely be too drastic of a look because it's layering on top of each other a lot, like that. That's all right. This is where we experiment a little bit. So let's see what else we can do. Oh, Voronoi. Let's take a look at that. Let's see what Voronoi would look like. Play around with this, put the Voronoi in here, and these give off different effects, by the way. So if you do distance, has this kind of look. Color will be more faceted, and position, since it's tied to a null, I think, yeah, it'll move the position to the null, which could be an effect you might be looking for. If you want certain areas to look more faceted than the others, like a radius. So let's go to color for now, and let's see what that ends up looking like. Kind of neat with some areas here. We have some large areas like this, and the reason for that is just mainly the scale of it. You can see here, it's because the normals are messing up, and we can remedy that by either increasing the scale, and then we'll have to go in and like play around with like some of the map ranges stuff. But if I bring this up a little bit more, you can try and fix a lot of those values. So it'll end up looking like this, and then our map range, you can see, ending up like that. let's do that. And we'll have to create different color ramps for these sections here, just to avoid this normal map problem here. So if I will just show you guys quickly here. So this is going into the factor. If I put this into here, remove this, and then you can see I can start manipulating it a bit more like that to give off a different effect. And then let's just do a third one. And then after this, I'll just do a big recap. Okay, color here, plug this in here. And as you can see, if I do that, a lot of increases and decreases here. This is the front-facing one, I believe. Because if we start adding this, yeah, it'll think it's on the reverse side, so we might not have to do it on this side here. You can see here what's happening to the normal map. It doesn't know what to do. It's not flat here. So we can change this color to this, and then lower this like that. And then we have our more faceted looking edge. Looks very stylistic and cool, I think. And finally, like, if you want to have an option to mix between the two, you can always grab the original normal map and do a mix RGB, drag this in here, put this in here, and now you can kind of like blend between the two to have different effects like that, and that looks really cool. Gives it a little bit more texture. Go over here and have our lighting. Kind of neat. Alright, so for the big recap, what's happening here? Well, we understood that the normal map is basically a set of coordinates packed in that represents different directions. So RGB, we took a look at that by separating them and seeing what each channel represents. They're all grayscale. So that means we are allowed to manipulate this grayscale information. So we unpack the coordinates into red, green, and blue, and we are able to use the color ramp or the map range to create interlaced ramps, so there's no smooth transitions, to try and stylize how the light is being represented on the model itself. From there, we combine them all back together, RGB, pack them all up, and now we're putting them through the normal map, and we're seeing the results of what the stylizations end up looking like. What else can we do with it? Well, since it was a black and white grayscale image, it gave us a chance to use various textures to manipulate that information to create kind of like interesting faceted stylized looks. I prefer kind of like the noise look itself, but you can see we can break the image up themselves and then combine them back together to make the light disperse in more interesting ways. It may create some errors in terms of like light situations, just to bring that up a bit here. As you can see here, the lighting is really not all there. So if I put a point light here, it's because it's pushing things around a little too much. It also might just be my metallic shader here, so if I just bring this down, it might look a little bit better. Bring the roughness up here. And so you can see, actually it's not too bad. There's still some nice edges here. It'll like disperse the light in interesting ways, but if you go too far with the masks, if you distort them too much, it might cause huge errors. Oh. I lost my masks. I lost my masks. There they are. Whoa, funky. What is this? There we go. Yeah, so we've able to manipulate it this way. We're bringing in noise textures and putting it before the map range. So we're putting a mix node here to create this nice faceted look and combining them all up together. And that's how you end up manipulating these normal maps to get more of a stylized look. Thank you.